All right, so one of the photos from Detroit Publishing that really caught my eye was this: the entrance to the Heinz Pier in Atlantic City. It's beautiful, radiantly white, like a ravishing marbled Roman triumphal arch, this Arc de Heinz. But what was the Heinz Pier? This was the Heinz, the ketchup and food manufacturer. What kind of pier could they have in Atlantic City? Was it an amusement pier, a convention center, a museum? Well, it was actually all three and a little more.
Picture Atlantic City, 1880s, 1890s. A long-reaching but less glamorous boardwalk. Only a few lavish hotels, electrified streets, big coal engines pulling in every day from all the major cities, fresh saltwater taffy lingering in the air. Only a skeleton of what would soon become the greatest seaside resort in the country. 6 piers dominated the boardwalk: Applegate's Pier, Auditorium Pier, Howard's Pier, West Jersey Pier, Steel Pier, and Iron Pier. Some didn't last long. West Jersey burnt down the year it opened, and Howard's, purportedly the first amusement pier built over the ocean, was demolished in 1890 to expand the boardwalk. Then, when real estate mogul and showman Captain James Young planted stakes in Atlantic City, he reshaped Applegate's Pier into a screeching, garish nightmare called Young's Ocean Pier in 1891. And Auditorium Pier turned into a similar monster called Steeplechase. And yes, there were many, many, many more piers throughout its history, but these were the main attractions, so to speak.
And look, I can talk forever about this shit. Each one of these piers has a history that can fill a bookshelf, but I want to focus on one: the Iron Pier.
Iron Pier was built by the Ocean Pier Company and opened in 1886, 4 years before Atlantic City officially opened to the public. Looking over an 1886 Sanborn fire insurance map, we can see a clear bird's eye view of what was featured on the Iron Pier: a pavilion and an opera house. Pretty anemic. Still, it was a decently sized structure, extending 1,000 feet into the ocean and about 30 feet wide. At this point, it was only one of 3 piers in Atlantic City, alongside Applegate's and Ocean. But then the Opera House. What the hell was that? According to the Handbook of Atlantic City in 1891, the largest pavilion having a seating capacity of nearly 2,000 people. Holy shit, guys! So, Iron Pier was something. It wasn't nothing. There was shit to do. Now, 6 years before all of this, in 1880, H.J. Heinz, founder of the food company that bore his name, had already visited Atlantic City. From the moment he looked around, he was utterly enchanted by the city's advertising potential. He saw the writing on the wall that Atlantic City would be in lights, and he wanted his name right beside it. So, in 1898, Heinz brazenly leased Iron Pier, one of the 6 dominating amusement complexes in the city at this point, before outright purchasing it for $60,000. And this was not a hostile takeover by any means. Investors and developers expected a runaway success with Iron Pier, but in the end, nobody really gave a shit. In the June 13th issue of the Daily Railway Age, we can get a glimpse of how all of this went down. Iron Pier was bought by Young and McShay at a forced sale, and it was then sold to the Heinz Company. When Iron Pier reopened later that year, 1898, it was rebranded as the Heinz Pier.
Okay, we need to talk about H.J. Heinz for a second. The guy was an advertising maverick. And yes, I know there's a lot of history with H.J. Heinz, from his Pure Foods initiatives that were dropped the moment he died, to his monumental factory in Pittsburgh, to his family ties to the fucking Trump family. Believe me, I know. But his advertising instincts were unmatched, and the reason why he bought a whole pier on primo Atlantic City real estate.
Heinz was never one to walk away from an advertising opportunity. The guy literally branded everything. Slapped his name on anything that had space. Wagons, boxcars, billboards, floats, postcards, people's property, like everything. And that's not including his World's Fair and Expo displays, which were so goddamn arresting in their beauty, it makes me sick just looking at what we'd lost. You know, in the 1939 World's Fair, Heinz had its own building, right? The Heinz Dome. And Christ, it looks like something ripped right out of the Jetsons. Like, I don't know how this practically advertises ketchup. But the biggest advertising boon in Heinz's time, the thing that put his name in lights right alongside Atlantic City, came in 1892 with the first electric billboard. When it was unveiled for the first time, it advertised homes along Long Island. Heinz must have scowled with bitter disappointment. No, goddammit, that won't do. So, he bought the sign in 1900. Now, imagine a cold, rainy afternoon in New York City. Maybe you stumble out of a grocery store or a streetcar and you chance to look up. And that's when you see it. 6 stories tall, 1,200 electric lights, all crowned by a 43-foot-long flashing pickle. That must have been one hell of a view. And there it was, the Heinz Pier. This ethereal beckoning from some far distant paradise, where it never rained, where the sun always shined, and where every corner had fresh fudge and candy. It was a call to action, an invitation to Shangri-La. The new century had arrived, and Heinz wanted people to spend it on his pier. And with that, his name, emboldened by lights, had finally towered over Atlantic City.
And I have to stress, from the very beginning, the Heinz Pier was always just a big ad for the company. Nothing more. But that still doesn't mean that it's not cool.
It's hard to imagine what Atlantic City looked like at the turn of the century because there's not really any modern parallel. It was an inconceivably opulent playground for the modest visitor to the affluent thrill seeker. Far grander than Old Vegas when Howard Hughes was boss. A dizzying, non-stop carnival of spinning multicolored lights, palatial hotels, enormous theaters, stocked boardwalks and beaches, trolleys, donkeys, photographers, scammers, doe-eyed dreamers, speculators, conmen, Kubrickian masquerades, a round-the-clock Saturnalia, everything topsy-turvy, assorted, hedonistic homage to Rome's pagan final days. God, it must have been beautiful. Oh, and they also had a Carnegie Library. And this was before the Boardwalk Empire days, when the entrepreneurs were the muscle. Looking at a map from this time, we can clearly see the 5 cardinal piers that made Atlantic City famous. Young's Ocean Pier, Young's $1 Million Pier, which opened in 1907, Steeplechase, Steel Pier, and finally, Heinz Pier.
So you get to Atlantic City, you waddle up to that shimmering white arch, you take your first step forward. What do you see? Well, ultimately, there weren't a lot of photos of the Heinz Pier. A lot of the more ornate features can only be seen in postcards or as a collage in the company's handbook.
The Heinz Pier was an outlier in Atlantic City, as it had no amusement rides, admission was free, and it was closed on Sundays. The pier stretched almost 900 feet from the boardwalk, and at the end stood a monumental electric 57 sign, a burning beacon in the night. The pier was known as the Crystal Palace by the Sea, or more aptly, the seashore home of the 57 varieties. All self-applied titles, probably. There's a great write-up about the pier in the May 1910 issue of Architectural Advertising. Quote, "It is a place of free entertainment, so attractively conducted as to offer the visitor a wide variety of interest and personal comfort, and at the same time make him assimilate, almost unconsciously, a very great deal of information about the goodness of the 57 varieties and the Heinz methods of food and preparation. Thousands of people from all parts of the country make use of this pleasant retreat daily to answer their correspondence, to read their home papers which are kept on file, to enjoy the delightful breezes which are always to be found at the end of the pier, or to view the magnificent collection of curios, art objects, and antiques which have been gathered from all parts of the world." And then a little further down, "There is nothing obtrusive about this advertising. The visitor scarcely realizes that it is advertising, yet a more efficient form of publicity has never been discovered, for the simple reason that it brings the goodness themselves direct to the customer's attention under the most favorable circumstances."
Each visitor was offered a free pickle pin when they walked through, and you could buy postcards like these.
Now we can look inside. There was the reading rooms where you could sample Heinz products, a curiosity cabinet, and uniquely, a sun parlor to keep visitors enticed during those off-season winter months when everything else was closed. And that was Heinz's genius. His pier could be enjoyed year-round. Exhibited throughout the pier were 144 paintings, bronzes, tapestries, and curios from all over the world's fairs since 1893. One of these paintings was Custer's Last Rally by John Mulvaney, and another was A Drive Under the Linden by Professor Scarbina. The rest were portraits of company executives and managers. So in this way, the Heinz Pier also functioned as a corporate pantheon for visitors to come up and revere and honor the divine men who built the Heinz empire. Corporate indulgence at its best. These men were not gods or emperors. They were punch cards, desk jockeys worth a dime a dozen. Anyway, there was also a pavilion where you could buy paintings, mirrors, vases, and statuary. There were also halls for lectures, exhibits, and a slideshow tour presentation of the Heinz plant in Pittsburgh, which I will be doing a whole video on soon. And these lectures were mostly just venues to evangelize company history and orate dreary company news. The exhibits, on the other hand, were pretty wide-ranging. There was this, as mentioned in the November-December 1913 issue of Bird Lore magazine. And, as mentioned in El Palacio of July 1st, 1925, there was a display of Pueblo Indian textiles. But by the 1930s and 40s, yes, the Heinz Pier lasted well into the 20th century, the lecture hall became a stage for cooking demonstrations. And if we look at a 1906 Sanborn Fire Insurance map of Atlantic City, we can see the layout of the pier. The sun parlor and exhibit hall up front, and a large seasonal exhibit hall at the end. Then, in a 1921 map, a movie theater was added to the seasonal exhibit hall.
And then it all came to an end.
The Heinz Pier was destroyed, slashed in half in 1944 by a hurricane, and demolished later in the year. In its 46-year lifespan, around 50 million people ambled through those pearly white gates. The Heinz Pier was never rebuilt. Today, Atlantic City is a grim, desolate shell of what it once was. I couldn't stomach the boardwalk when I visited. But almost all of Atlantic City's famous piers still exist in some half-hearted iteration. Young's $1 Million Pier became the dead Playground Mall, a blocky, gross, ugly monstrosity used mainly for ad space. Steel Pier is still a theme park that I would never step foot in. The Three Stooges did a bit there back in 1938. The Garden Pier, which opened in 1913, is now in ruins. Steeplechase closed in 1986. Young's Ocean Pier burnt down in 1912, and unlike Heinz, Young capitalized on the demise of his pier, charging onlookers a nickel to get a better view of the salvage.
I'm almost happy the Heinz Pier doesn't exist. It would have been so heartbreaking to see it homogenized and stripped of all of its unique personality features like the rest of the Heinz Company. I guess don't be sad that it's gone. Be happy that it existed. No. I'm actually just about to eat right now, so you can literally get whatever you want. Where did you say you were again? Why are you all the way out there? Okay, well, either way, I'm good. I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.
What the fuck is this? It's my ketchup!